The January night had a way of lying. It looked clean, quiet, almost holy. The cold air sharpened the stars until they felt close enough to cut your skin, and the moonlight painted everything silver, hiding rot beneath beauty. People believed January nights were peaceful, that nothing evil dared move when the cold itself could kill you. They were wrong. That night, the cold didn't just bite. It watched. Ayan realized this the moment his breath stopped fogging the air. He stood alone on the broken road leading into Kharagpur, a village so small it didn't appear on most maps anymore. The taxi that had dropped him there vanished into the darkness without looking back, its red tail lights swallowed by the trees like bleeding eyes closing forever. Silence followed. Not the normal kind. This silence had weight. Ayan rubbed his gloved hands together and checked his phone. No signal. No internet. The battery icon flickered at 19%, even though he had charged it fully before leaving the city. Just cold, he muttered, though his voice sounded too stranger to his own ears. He had come because of his mother's final letter. If I die before January ends, she had written, don't bury me in the city. Bring my ashes to Kharagpur. And never, ever stay there after midnight. She had died on the 1st of January. Cancer, the doctors said. Clean. Simple. Explained. But his mother had never been afraid of dying. She had been afraid of January nights. The village greeted him with dark, hollow houses leaning inward like conspirators whispering secrets. Windows were boarded, doors locked with chains thick enough to restrain animals or people. No lights burned. No smoke rose from chimneys. Except one. At the far end of the road stood a single house with a dim yellow glow bleeding through its curtains. The only sign of life. Ayan hesitated. Every instinct screamed to turn back, but there was nowhere to go. The road behind him had already disappeared into fog rolling unnaturally fast, thick and white like a wall. So he walked toward the light. Each step crunched louder than it should have. The frost beneath his boots sounded like bones snapping. With every breath, the cold crawled deeper into his chest, heavy and wet, as if he were inhaling something alive. The door of the lit house opened before he could knock. An old man stood there, impossibly thin, his skin stretched tight over sharp bones. His eyes were pale, almost colorless, and reflected the moonlight like glass. You're late, the man said. I didn't say, Ayan began. You never say, the old man interrupted. January brings everyone late. Before Ayan could respond, the man turned and walked inside. Against his better judgment, Ayan followed. The house smelled of damp earth and burnt wood. The walls were lined with photographs, dozens of them, black and white portraits of villagers standing stiffly in the snow. Every face wore the same expression, fear frozen mid-scream. Ayan stopped. They all, he asked, stayed after midnight. The old man replied casually, shutting the door. The sound echoed far too long for such a small house. A fire crackled weakly in the hearth, giving little warmth. A woman sat near it, rocking slowly back and forth. Her hair was long, white, and unkempt, covering most of her face. She looked up. Ayan's heart slammed against his ribs. The woman had his mother's eyes. Not similar. The same. Mom, he whispered. The woman smiled, and her mouth stretched too wide, splitting the skin at the corners. Black fluid leaked down her chin and hissed when it touched the floor. That's not her, the old man said calmly. January wears many faces. The woman stood. Her joints cracked loudly, bending the wrong way as she walked toward him. Ayan stumbled backward, slamming into the wall. The photographs rattled violently, as if laughing. What do you want? Ayan screamed. The woman tilted her head. To breathe, she said softly. It's so cold without breath. The fire went out. Darkness swallowed the room, thick and absolute. In it, Ayan felt hands, dozens of them, brushing against his coat, his neck, his face. Cold fingers slipped into his mouth, his nose, forcing his jaw open. He gagged. Breath rushed out of him in a white cloud, and the hands pulled it away. When the fire reignited, Ayan collapsed to the floor, gasping. The woman was gone. So were the hands. The old man knelt beside him. Listen carefully, he said. January nights are hungry. They steal breath from the living to feed the dead. That's why no one stays outside after midnight. Ion checked his watch. 11:47 p.m. I need to leave, he said. The old man laughed. It sounded like dry leaves scraping stone. You can't. Midnight hasn't passed yet. The walls began to creak. Frost spread across them in branching patterns that looked disturbingly like veins. From outside came a sound, slow, dragging footsteps, hundreds of them, crunching toward the house. The photographs started bleeding. Black streaks ran from their eyes, pooling on the floor. Faces twisted, mouths opening wider and wider, whispering in unison. Give us breath. The door burst open. The village stood outside, not living people, but shapes wearing human skin. Their chests were sunken, their lips blue, eyes hollow. Each exhale rattled like broken glass. Midnight struck. The sound of a bell echoed from nowhere. The old man grabbed Ion's arm. Run. Don't breathe. Not until morning. Ion didn't argue. He ran into the freezing night, lungs burning, throat screaming. The dead followed, moving faster than they should, their bodies jerking unnaturally as they chased him. He held his breath. His vision blurred. Stars exploded into white sparks. The cold gnawed at his insides, and something inside his chest clawed desperately to inhale. Behind him, the dead wailed, not in anger, but in hunger. Just as his knees buckled, he saw it. A frozen river glowing faintly under moonlight. The ice was cracked, black water moving beneath like a living thing. He collapsed at its edge as the dead closed in. His lungs betrayed him. He inhaled. Pain ripped through his chest, but instead of air, warmth rushed in. The cold retreated. The dead screamed. Morning light spilled over the horizon. The dead froze mid-step, their bodies cracking and collapsing into piles of ice and dust. The village behind him vanished, replaced by empty fields. Ion lay there, coughing alive. Weeks later, he returned to the city. Doctors found nothing wrong with him, except one thing. His breath never fogged the air again. And every January night, just before midnight, he hears footsteps outside his window, and something softly whispering, "Share your breath." The cold arrived before the night did. It slipped through the cracks of the old boarding house like a living thing, crawling along the wooden floors, clinging to the walls, settling into bones. By the time the sun disappeared behind the bare trees, the entire place felt hollowed out by winter. Mira sat on the edge of her bed, rubbing her hands together, watching her breath bloom white in the dim room. The heater hadn't worked since she arrived that morning, and the landlord's words echoed in her mind. January nights don't like warmth, he had said, smiling without humor. Better to let them pass. She had laughed then. She wasn't laughing now. Outside her window, snow fell in slow, careful flakes, as if the sky itself was hesitating. The boarding house stood miles away from the nearest town, surrounded by dead fields and a thin forest whose branches clawed at the dark. Mira had come here for solitude, to escape noise, people, memories. After the accident, silence had felt safer than sympathy. But silence, she was learning, had its own voice. The first sound came at exactly 9:13 p.m. A single knock. Not on her door, on the wall. Mira froze. The sound was soft, deliberate. 3 slow taps, spaced evenly, as if someone were knocking from inside the walls themselves. She waited, holding her breath. Nothing followed. Old houses, she whispered, though her heart refused to slow. She lay down, pulling the blanket up to her chin, staring at the ceiling. The shadows there seemed deeper than they should have been, pooling in corners that didn't exist in daylight. At 9:26, the knocking returned. 3 taps, this time closer. The wall beside her bed shivered faintly, dust falling from the cracks. Mira sat up, her skin prickling with cold that had nothing to do with temperature. "Hello?" she called, immediately regretting it. The knocking stopped. Then came the whisper. so faint it almost blended with the wind outside. Mira, her name. She slid off the bed and pressed her ear against the wall. The wood was ice cold, burning her skin. "Who's there?" she asked. Silence answered. She backed away, her pulse roaring in her ears. Her phone lay on the nightstand. No signal, as expected, but the battery was draining unnaturally fast. 34%. She had charged it fully that afternoon. The lights flickered. For a brief moment, the room dimmed enough for the shadows to move. She saw them shift, stretch, reach. When the light stabilized, the room looked normal again. Too normal. At 10 p.m., the boarding house settled into deep stillness. No creaks, no wind. Even the snow seemed to stop falling. Mira stepped into the hallway, unable to stay in the room any longer. The corridor was narrow and long, with doors lining both sides, all closed. The wallpaper peeled in long, curling strips, revealing dark stains beneath that resembled handprints. The air smelled damp, old, like something sealed away too long. She took one step. The floorboard behind her creaked. She spun around. The door to her room was closed. She was certain she'd left it open. Her breath came out in shallow bursts as she reached for the handle. It turned easily. The room beyond was unchanged, except for the wall. A thin crack had appeared where there hadn't been one before, running from floor to ceiling. From inside it came a faint exhale. Slow, cold, breathing. Mira slammed the door and staggered back into the hallway. The breathing followed her, seeping through the walls now, surrounding her, as if the house itself had lungs. "Stop," she whispered. "Please." The whisper returned, clearer this time. "January is empty," it said. "We fill it." The hallway lights went out. Darkness swallowed everything. Mira ran. She didn't know where she was going, only away from the sound of breathing that grew louder with each step. Doors rattled as she passed them, something slamming against the wood from the other side, desperate to get out. Or in. She reached the stairs and stumbled down, nearly falling as the air thickened, pressing against her chest. Each breath felt harder than the last, as if the cold was stealing space inside her lungs. The living room was worse. The fireplace sat cold and black, its ashes undisturbed for years. Frost coated the furniture, creeping over the walls in branching patterns that pulsed faintly, like veins. In the center of the room stood a mirror. Mira didn't remember seeing it earlier. It was tall, old, its frame carved with figures twisted into unnatural poses. As she approached, her reflection came into focus, and then did something wrong. It smiled. Mira did not. The reflection's lips parted, releasing a cloud of white breath that fogged the glass from the inside. "You don't need it all," the reflection said. Its voice echoed unnaturally, layered with others beneath it. "You have more than you deserve." Mira staggered back. "No," she said. "You're not real." The reflection tilted its head. "Neither is January," it replied. The room filled with sound, breathing, whispering, soft laughter. Shapes pressed against the walls from the inside, their outlines briefly visible, faces flattened and distorted as they pushed closer. The mirror cracked. A hand reached through. Mira screamed and turned, running for the front door. Her fingers slipped on the frozen handle before finally finding purchase. It opened. Outside, the night waited. The snow-covered field stretched endlessly, illuminated by a moon too bright, too watchful. The forest beyond stood motionless, its trees bent inward as if listening. Mira ran into the cold, her feet sinking into the snow. The air burned her throat, each breath stealing warmth she couldn't afford to lose. Behind her, the boarding house breathed. A deep, satisfied inhale. She collapsed near the edge of the forest, her vision tunneling. The whisper followed her into the open. "Stay," it urged gently. "January needs you." Her lungs screamed. Her chest felt hollow, like something had already been taken. With the last of her strength, Mira held her breath. The world dimmed. Time stretched thin, snapping like ice. Then morning. Light crept over the fields, pale and weak, but real. The cold loosened its grip slightly. The whisper faded, dissolving into nothing. Mira gasped, dragging air back into her lungs. It tasted wrong. Thin, but it was hers. The boarding house stood behind her, silent and empty. No breathing, no movement. When authorities arrived later that day, they found no sign of anyone else having lived there. No landlord, no records. Only one thing. In the living room, on the frost-covered wall, words had been carved deeply into the wood. January takes what is left and used. Mira never stayed anywhere remote again. And every January night, when the air grows too still, she wakes gasping, certain that something, somewhere, is counting her breaths, waiting for her to waste one. The January night arrived without warning, the kind that pressed cold fingers against the windows and refused to let sleep come easily. Frost crept like white veins across the glass, and the moon hung low, pale and watchful, as if it knew what would happen before dawn. I was alone in the old house at the edge of the village, a place people avoided once winter set in. They said the walls remembered things. I never believed that. Not until that night. The heater coughed weakly in the corner, failing more than working. I wrapped myself in a blanket and sat near the fireplace, listening to the wind scrape its nails along the roof. Outside, the trees groaned, bending under the weight of ice, their branches knocking together like bones. Every sound felt louder in January, sharper, as if the cold carried noise more clearly. At exactly 12:17 a.m., the knocking began. It wasn't loud. That was the worst part. 3 slow taps, coming from somewhere deep within the house. Not the door, not the windows, the walls. I stood up, heart pounding, and waited. The house fell silent again, so quiet I could hear my own breathing. I told myself it was pipes contracting in the cold. Old houses did that. Everyone knew that. Then the knocking came again. 3 taps. Closer. I followed the sound down the narrow hallway, the floorboards icy beneath my feet. The air felt heavier there, thick with a smell like damp soil. Each step made the darkness deeper, as if the corridor was stretching. The knocking led me to the I hadn't opened that door in years. The handle was cold as ice when I touched it. As I pushed the door open, the smell was strong. The room was empty, except for the old wardrobe against the wall. Its door was slightly open. Tap, tap. The sound came from inside the wardrobe. My fingers trembled as I pulled the door open wider. Inside were only a few old coats, stiff with age. No animals. No pipes. Nothing that should make a sound. Then I saw the frost on the back wall, handprints pressed into the ice from the inside, as if someone had been trying to push their way out. The wardrobe door slammed shut on its own. I stumbled back, my breath turning white in the air. The temperature dropped suddenly, so fast my teeth began to chatter. From behind the door came a slow, dragging sound, like nails being pulled across wood. A voice whispered my name. It didn't sound angry. It sounded tired. I ran, down the hallway, into the living room, slamming doors behind me. The house answered with groans and cracks, as if it was waking up. The knocking followed, moving through the walls, keeping pace with me. The fireplace flared suddenly, the flames burning blue. In the fire, I saw faces, thin, frozen, mouths open in silent screams. They pressed against the glass of the hearth, eyes wide, begging. The knocking stopped. For a moment, I thought it was over. Then the front door creaked open by itself, letting in a blade of winter air. Snow drifted across the floor, though the storm outside had ended hours ago. Footprints appeared in the snow, bare feet, coming toward me. I backed away until my shoulders hit the wall. The footprints stopped a few feet in front of me. The air there shimmered, and slowly, a shape began to form. Tall, thin, its skin pale as frostbitten flesh. Its eyes were dark hollows, and its breath fell in clouds, colder than the room itself. "You left us," it whispered. Memories slammed into me. This house, the winter years ago, the people who had sheltered here during a storm, the heater that failed, the night I fled, afraid, leaving them behind. The figure stepped closer. Its feet never touched the ground. January remembers, it said. The walls began to knock again. All at once, dozens of taps echoing through the house. The faces in the fire screamed without sound. The frost crept up my legs, numbing, burning. I tried to apologize, but my lips wouldn't move. The figure reached out, its hand passing through my chest, straight into my heart. Cold flooded me, deeper than any winter I had known. My vision dimmed, the house fading into darkness. When morning came, the villagers found the house silent. Smoke rose gently from the chimney, as if someone had kept the fire burning all night. Inside, they found me standing by the wall, frozen solid, my hand pressed against the plaster from the inside. 3 small cracks marked the spot where my fingers touched. And every January night after that, when the cold is sharpest, the old house begins to knock again.